Hi, it's Kate. Welcome to the channel. Today I'm interviewing Carmel, one of the beautiful ladies that was a co-author in a book we published together earlier this year. So she is a Christian wholeness life coach, and she is turning her one-on-one coaching into a group program and into hopefully an evergreen course. So we're going to talk a little bit about the concepts and ideas that she has. So stay tuned. All right, let's get right into this, Carmel. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the program that you want to create?
Okay, I want to create a program called Women of Value. I feel that I have years of experience of helping women, as well as years of experience just from my own experience in life. I want to help women overcome obstacles in life. I want them to overcome fear and loneliness and create healthy boundaries, create healthy mindsets in every season of life. I want them to know that they don't need to submit to religious mindsets of man, but live out their godly dreams. I want to help them speak out and not be embarrassed or ashamed of what other people say or do, but to go on their own convictions.
Wow, that is a beautiful vision. And I can imagine that that may have come through a little bit of your personal journey. Can you tell us a little bit why this program is so important to you?
Well, sometimes through my own demise, I've learned that I've had to form healthy boundaries and not carry others' heavy burdens. The major reason why I'm wanting to do this is that I think the way God has made me is that the lessons that I have learnt in life, I can help others with that. So as I have learnt to grow and not carry my neighbours and not carry my family and not carry people around me, but to learn to just be focused and know that I have dreams in my heart that God has wanted me to fulfill. And as I do that and come forward in confidence and courage, then I just seem to draw women and families around my life, and I'm able to help them. And I believe that that is a gift that God has given me.
That's beautiful. Just what you said about how God has made you special and he's really given you some of the gifts. I'm just curious, just think for a second that God is wherever he is when he's thinking about that moment when he decides to create you. What do you think are some of the feelings that he has and some of the joys he has as he puts that together?
Yeah, I've never had anybody say that, but I feel like contentment. And I see him in his garden because Carmel means garden.
Hmm.
And for many years, I struggled with that because growing up in Australia with the name Carmel, I didn't understand any of that. And it actually took me traveling to Israel and going and traveling and driving up Mount Carmel and discovering who I really was and what God wanted for me to do, and then coming home with a vision and a dream to help other women and bringing home a business and then forming my business, Carmel's Garden. And so there's so much meaning behind my name of my business, but I blossom in creativity. I blossom planting things in my garden and doing things in my garden. And my heart is to see women grow and bloom in my garden. So, now I wear my name with pride and I understand why I was called that. And that God called me to Israel with that plan in his heart for me to discover my own identity and why he put me here on this earth. And that was just the start of the journey when I went there in 2010 by faith. And as the years have gone on, I've really, as I do my quilting and my painting and all the things that I love doing, I love cooking, I love to share all that with everybody. My mum taught me that. She taught me to share my life and to be open-hearted with people. now, really discovering that that is my true identity, and my heart, as well as my God-given gifts, are to serve and help other families and women. And I've been doing that for 30 years, but now God is calling me on to the greater stage. And I know I've always been born for the stage, and that's okay. But, really defining this. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about all this and move forward in it.
That's awesome. So it's like you're this master gardener. And what's interesting is, well, I actually have a college roommate whose name was Carmel. I didn't know that it meant garden, though. So that's really, really interesting. So I have this vision of you when you're talking about these women and you want to help women overcome obstacles and fears and the loneliness and create boundaries and get a healthy mindset and stuff like that. I have this vision that you're like walking into a garden and you see these plants that are failing to thrive, and you're, helping cut off the dead leaves and giving them the nutrients they need and the sunshine and the water. And I feel like that's what you're doing with some of this work. There's a lot of that sort of nurturing feel to what the way that you talked about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And like I've had it prophesied over me, and I do that. I get women who are shipwrecked, nearly shipwrecked, and I bring them into my life, and I plant them in my garden, and I help them in their distress, and then I see them move on. And I see them be able to make their own choices and be able to be wise in their decisions. And I teach them that it's okay to nurture themselves and to care for themselves so that they can make healthy choices to help their family and their decisions. And, I have women that 30 years ago that I still connect with again now, especially since 5 years ago, I really started my own health journey with and using essential oils. And God has brought these women back into my life, and I've had the privilege again to help them in so many seasons that they're in. And I want to see women thrive in every season of their life, because often we just survive. And, the thing is that we want to thrive. And I know that God has gifted me with this talent to be able to do that, and I want to use it well. And I love helping women in every season of their life.
And that's beautiful. Let's go ahead and read the letters that you wrote. The first letter is coming from a woman who wants very much to be in your program. And so this letter is going to give us a clue as to what her current state is and maybe some of what she sees for her future and why she desperately wants to be in your program.
So I've written so much of my life, I have taken the back seat with family, friends, decisions, and choices. This is not who I truly am. And I think that my needs and wants I have ignored, and others have ignored them as well. And I want to be able to be myself and shine in that. I find it hard being in the centre of conversations, even though sometimes I portray a bubbly personality when I speak and share with people. And often I say too much and I feel exposed in a conversation. And then later on, I feel very struggle. I have a lot of struggle with that. And I find that I can be melting down on the inside, and often people don't even know that. So I want to be able to be okay about who I am and who God created me to be, instead of allowing the struggles in my life to always be in the forefront. Staying silent is not something that I do well. Often it's a coping mechanism, but then I shove things down and I'm not able to then process and really do my self-care well. So what this person or me or, who I'm referring to as my client, I want to form healthy boundaries with family and friends and learn to do self-care without guilt.
That is very, very hard to hear. And probably the most difficult part for me was hearing somebody who may say something like, "This is not who I truly am." I mean, that is somebody who has sincerely given up their identity to pretend to be something else. That's harsh. Let's go ahead and read the better letter. I'm sure you're ready with that one. Letters from the same client after they complete your program, and it's the best thank you letter you've ever received.
Hello, Carmel. The words you write and speak are encouraging and uplifting. I know I am a special person in the eyes of God, though at times I don't always feel that way. Doing your course has been such value to me. I've learned to speak up about my needs and desires, and I don't shy away from other people's opinions these days, especially when it comes to my family and their life choices. Over the time we have connected, I have felt heard, and I was able to put into place my own self-care and get appointments organised for myself without feeling guilty, and that I was taking time out from work and other family needs. I am more confident to speak up to my boss and family when I need to tend to my own health care. I find I am not putting off making critical appointments for myself and feel more comfortable speaking up and asking for my time. I love that I am now drafting my own story, and you have given me the keys to guide me every step of the way. I am looking forward to being able to be a published author, maybe one day like you, or just being confident in who I am and who God has made me to be.
That is beautiful. You kind of get the idea that this is a flourishing person. So we got a little bit of the clues that I'm looking for in these letters. We know what their state is before they start, and we kind of get an idea of what it's like for them afterwards. In the first one, we have a few of the motivations that they have for wanting to change. And in that second one, we get kind of this idea of some of the difficulties they had to overcome in order to get there, because those are the keys we're looking for. That first letter tells us what it was like for them before they start, how they might see a future state, even if it's different than what it really is, but it tells us what that is, and it tells us their motivations. In that second letter, we get an idea of what the end result is, and we get an idea of what they had to overcome to get there. Now, this means that when we're putting together our course, we can look at where we're starting and where we want to end. We want to see what are they doing that's different. You actually have a lot of those actions, the self-care, the speaking up for myself. I made these appointments, even though it may have inconvenienced other people. So you kind of get that in there. And then how did their perspective about themselves shift? And one thing I really love that you put in there, she writes in that second letter, I know I am a special person in the eyes of God, even when I don't feel like it. I mean, that's number one, acknowledging that maybe our feelings aren't there all the time, but it's still a fact, regardless of how I feel, that God still sees me as special. So very beautifully done.
Thank
So
you.
what are you thinking in your course, or what do you have in your course that bridges that gap?
I have different things that I set up, and each week we work on different areas to help them be able to grow, to look at effects of what's happening in their lives. Often it's from people's childhood, it's from their relationships. So we just, if I'm working on a one-on-one client, we, hone in on that, and I give them homework and things to do that's really going to uplift them. My ideal thing is I'd love to do group coaching as well. And that's why I'm talking to you today, Kate. I want to be able to create a course that's evergreen so that people can watch the course and then come into my weekly group or come and, meet with me. So, be able then to help much more women in that process. So, yeah, there's so many things that, I have a set program that I share with my ladies, and to be able to help them grow each week in that step, give them homework, give them the ability to see that they are created in God's image and they're loved. Often my ladies, I introduce essential oils to them, or they already are using essential oils, or we discuss the reasons why they can help them, because that's definitely part of who I am. That's been really life transforming for me. So I just take each woman on that journey of discovery, where they're at and where God sees them. And I have an incredible gift and an ability to be able to discern where people are at. And I have a gift as well that when I speak, it goes straight into their spirit and they come alive with that as well. So if, people want to work with me and they understand all of those things, I see much growth in their lives, and it's a real blessing to be part of that.
Awesome. Now, does your course right now have a set structure? Or are you in the middle of figuring that out right now?
I do have a set structure, but it's not in front of me, so I'm just sort of ad-libbing about what we're talking about. But there are things that I feel as well. That's why I'm talking to you about get some help about some ideas that you have too, because in some ways starting out, and I have been working one-on-one with women, but I'd like to be able to, get some more help so that I can do an Evergreen course where I'm helping more than just one-on-one with women, and that people are getting value, families are getting value from what I have to give to them.
Yeah, working one-on-one with women is awesome because it does let you really get to know people. But as you're getting to know them, you discover strategies that work for specific women. So you get practice in using specific strategies and discovering when a strategy doesn't work with one person. So you almost have to look at a different strategy. Now, this is the same for courses too. There's not a one size fits all strategy for courses, just like there's not a one size fits all strategy for women, right?
Correct.
I mean, you and I are both Christians. And if you look at some of the miracles that Jesus did, which you'll notice in him, and I've looked at his miracles going, okay, this is interesting. When he goes to do something, he will often do things differently person by person. Like he doesn't have a formula that says this is the thing, anytime anybody's blind, this is it, it's like he does something different for every person, and it feels very much like we're seen. So how can you do that for somebody when you're doing one-on-one? You can do a very individualized, personalized approach, which is fabulous. And you get good at talking about things in different ways. When you go to a group program, you can throw out a few things, especially if you're live, because you can talk to people and go, oh, this isn't going to work for this person, so I'm going to give them this instead. Or this thing, because of their personality and I can see what they're struggling with, we're going to do this, activity. When you go to do an Evergreen course, it doesn't always give you the ability to tailor down to the person. And that's okay still, because there are some things that are going to be basic. They apply to everybody, and some things that are going to be strategy based. And so my suggestion is that if you know the particular modules that you're going to have to include in a program that you would eventually one day do as Evergreen, to present them several times in group programs. So that way you're used to how to present it, when to say, here are 3 strategies you can use, choose the one that works best for you, or here are 3 strategies to use and when you might want to use each one. Like this is a great strategy for when you're having a problem in your relationship with your young children. This is a good strategy to use, or boundaries that you would use when you're dealing with a teenager. And this is a good strategy to use when you're dealing with your husband, because we know the same strategy does not work with your husband as it does for your little kid.
No.
Your husband doesn't like that.
No, your husband doesn't want to be spoken to you like you do children. And of course, me having a teacher's background and working for many years with children, I get told off if I speak to my husband that way. And as someone who's worked for many years in that field, when you are busy, you drop into that. So you really have to learn how to speak to your husband and your children or your neighbours and your parents, whoever it is, very differently.
Mhm. Yeah. And what's interesting is the more deeply you understand why you're talking differently with each one, you can often find general principles that apply and why you're doing it differently. Because, say, for instance, with every interaction, you want to be respectful. So, recognizing what respect looks like to the person you're talking about and adjusting yourself so that you're expressing that level of respect. And that's just an example. But when you're putting these strategies together, you can find the advice you have is different, but the courses can still apply. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
My suggestion is to go forward with the group program. And as you're doing this, prepare the content for each one and spend as much time analyzing how well it went, what questions they had, what you could do differently as you do in preparing it. So you're spending, let's say, for a 1 hour session, you're spending 4 hours to prepare and 4 hours of analysis, something along those lines. These are just broad numbers. It may not be 4 hours, but it should be just as much time because right afterwards, you're going to take that data and you're going to change or tweak or test those materials so that they're even better next time. The other encouragement that I have is with every single module that you're going to do, when you are trying it, you're early, think of it as experimental as you can. Go as much Carmel as you can. Don't try to be the standard. This is the way I've always seen it done, so I want to do it this way. No, embrace the gardener, embrace the flourishing, come in with leaves in your hair. I'm just like, maybe not that crazy, but push the boundaries of what you think could potentially be done in that class. Because if it doesn't work, it's just an experiment. You just want to see if that makes the difference. And a lot of times it's when we are pushing the boundaries and when we're pushing what we think is possible, then we end up getting pretty creative. And so our final solution may not look like that first one, but it could look a whole lot better than if we just try to play it safe in the beginning.
Yeah, that's really great advice, Kate. And that is the one thing that I do want to move into next, which is group. And it's interesting because my first subject, before I called it Women of Value, I just said plant the seed and flourish in, the season that you're in. And then now planting that seed is part of what I'm teaching the women and doing as well. So, yeah, the more I think about it too, I hear, so much is being said in the world and in the church and in life about flourishing in the season you're in, thriving instead of just surviving. And, that's the process that God's had me on specifically for the last 12 months of being able to clarify that and be at that place, be a published author and having my voice heard and being able to help more than just one-on-one women across my kitchen table. So
Mhm.
thank you for that.
Awesome. So let's go and have some fun with one of your topics. Let's try to figure out something that you could do that's experimental and almost dangerous to the enemy sort of way, not dangerous to us.
For me, learning not to carry other people's burdens and teaching women how to do that well, not feeling like they have to be able to do everything for the family, particularly when the family's grown up and they've got their own lives. I'm finding that women in their 50s and 60s are still really haven't come into their true identity and who they are. So that's who God's bringing into my life, helping these women be able to make very clear decisions about their own self-care and be able to thrive in the season that they're in because they've got their goals in their life to retire and to be happy in their relationships. But often when you're not confident, you've been a quieter person or you've not been sure with who you are, you are still serving your adult children or serving other people's needs, which is not healthy. You need to be able to deal with that and come to a place where you're free and you're able to make those decisions. So, some of those things that I read out as well are things that I have worked with my clients and helping them be able to, make those appointments and talk to their bosses without guilt and be able to flourish where they're at, so that then, and teaching them to, you know, to deal with those self-sabotaging thoughts and actions that they have, so that they can thrive and move forward in the dreams that they have in life. So yeah, I feel like I'm the coach that comes and encourages them and says it's okay. It's okay to care for yourself. It's okay to do all these things. You need to think about your life and your future, and you need to be able to take that time out, because often as mums, they're working, they're being busy. Sadly, marriages break up and women end up still caring for their children and their grandchildren, and they don't have healthy boundaries around that, or, they've been in a marriage for a long time and then they're starting on working on that relationship with their husband as well. So there's so many facets of things that I've experienced myself. I've been with people on that journey, and I have, God-given keys and wisdom to be able to help women pick them up and move into those areas of freedom and confidence, and be able to, write their story, whether it's published or it's not published, but to be able to come forward in confidence in knowing who God's made them to be.
Okay, so I have a crazy idea for you. Are
Okay.
you up for a crazy idea?
Absolutely, Kate.
So imagine that this particular module is named something along the lines of traveling light, but I don't think that that is the right title for it, but something along those lines. Are you familiar with that book?
No, I'm not familiar with that book.
I haven't read the book, but I'm familiar with it. But it's a book about not carrying unnecessary burdens, shedding unnecessary weight that you might be carrying with others. So imagine that you have a module that's something about, I don't like titles that are learning not to carry others' burdens, because that's got a not in it and it leaves the learning to carry others, but that kind of is neglected by our brains. What our brain hears is carry lots of other people's burdens. You could use Matthew 11:38. Maybe it's something along the lines of easy to bear. I really think you should name all of your segments having to do with gardens and seeds and planting and nourishing and all that. So it needs to be somewhere along those. There's a lot that goes into naming a program. So we're not going to go into that just yet. But imagine that you start this program coming in with a gardener's hat, and you come in with your gardener bag and you take off your gardening gloves and you put it down. You're like, I just got myself a new gardening bag. I'm so happy with it. And then out of your gardening bag, you pull out a paving stone. And on that paving stone is my husband's happiness. This is one of the burdens that I have in my gardening bag. I'm really responsible for my husband's happiness. And so it weighs my bag down, but I'm able to keep my husband happy. And then you grab another paving stone. And in that paving stone, you have another burden that you're bearing that doesn't belong to you. And then you make your point that we're carrying around this heavy weight because we're trying very hard to meet the expectations of others, and then challenge them to write out, what are the burdens you're carrying? I want you to go look at your schedule. What are you doing in your schedule in order to take care of other people's burdens? So that might be a kind of a cool way to open up this idea of making sure that the burdens that we're bearing are lined up with what Jesus says we ought to be carrying, and not carrying in all of those things that don't belong to us.
Beautiful way of putting it. And I love that. Yeah, that's right. I come in as the gardener. And, that to me reflects what Jesus is to us. He's the gardener in our heart and in our life. And
Yeah.
I've often seen that picture when I pray with women and I ask them, what do you see? And they'll say, oh, I'm only carrying my suitcase. And then I'll see, at the cross, another 100 suitcases all piled up. Jesus is carrying that for them. And as we process through either through prayer or through the journey of what we're walking through, I'm always asking the women, what do you see? What is God doing for you? So that's a wonderful analogy. Is that the word that you
Yeah.
say, Kate? Particularly for me, why I wear my glasses. I have dyslexia, and I have a lisp as well. You may have picked that up. So being able to pronounce words and express how I'm really feeling has been difficult for me. So I think, what you're saying is great, because it's something that as a preschool teacher and being able to tell stories to children, that's a great analogy of showing women in a very practical way
Mhm.
that they're these things that we carry that are not ours to carry. We can give them to the Lord.
Well, yeah, and that what's really helpful with things like this is that when we talk about carrying other people's burdens, it's very abstract. You can't see stress. You can't see the weight of somebody's emotion. So having just like, well, you were a preschool teacher, so you see how important it is for preschoolers to have that. Adults also, it sticks with our brains better when it's something other than just an abstract. Can we take an abstract concept and give them some concrete picture that helps them see it? And maybe the next time when they feel so stressed, they're wondering, what paving stone do I have in my bag?
Yeah, which is really great, because that's interesting, because I'm an abstract artist and I probably see and do things in abstract. So it's really good to, get some ideas that are practical,
Mhm.
that be able to then help women and young girls who are at that stage of their life, or women who are in their 50s and 60s, and their lives have changed so much. And yeah, in that bag, what's in there for them that they can let go of and do consistently for themselves.
With a picture like that, you can have a phrase afterwards of what's in your bag. And that actually always harkens back to, it always can go back to, what am I carrying that I ought not carry? So it becomes a phrase that you can use with your women in your group that always calls them to think about what they're carrying in that moment. Now, if you're helping these women write stories as they're going along the way, you may want to incorporate that in your program if you haven't already, where they're looking at their life in 5-year segments and writing who they were in those time frames and what they were going through and what their thoughts were, what their concerns were. So that might be part of the program if you're not already doing that. So,
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I'm just sort of starting to look at that. What am I going to say to
mhm.
them? So yeah, that's a really great key. I know I was looking at maybe a couple of paragraphs about different stages of their life. So same sort of thing. Because
Yeah.
that's right. When we get into our 50s, we've got lots to write about, but it's getting them to be focused on what is the key things
Yeah.
for them to put down, so that their story can be written as well.
Yeah, because I mean, there's so much in our lives that we don't need to tell all of it. But like you said, what are the key things? And of course, I learned this from another person that I worked with is that we have healing stories and we have hurting stories. So some of those stories that we have are not yet ready to be told. We're
Yeah.
just not to the place where we have received healing. And I think it's knowing in what formats we're safe to share our stories. So when I wrote my part of the book that we did together, I was finally able to the point where I could tell that part publicly. But it was very kind of new for me. I wouldn't have been able to write that a year or two ago or 5 years ago. I mean, it's pretty beautiful for me. There's no way I would want to share my story. But then, I would want like to give everybody else the mic, give everybody else the chance. But to see that in sharing my story, I'm actually encouraging other people to share theirs.
Yeah.
To me, that is beautiful that, that God would use what little I have to offer, because it doesn't feel like I have that much, that He would use that to help unleash some of these other stories that's out there, because I really do want to hear the stories that other women have to share.
And me as well. And that's the thing. I've been like you. I've been happy to be in the background and support and organise, but not stand on the stage or behind the mic. Even though as a little girl, I used to get up my dad's garage and I, have the fake mic and sing into it. And I wanted to be in a rock band. And, I love all that. But I have shied away from it. And I feel like God is saying, no, you need to be speaking, you need to be sharing, you need to be helping, because this is who I've called you to be. And I'm walking up those steps and with confidence, and I'm wanting to take as many women with me so that they find who they are and thrive in that season of their lives.
That is beautiful. And I do see you're going to have to change out your background so that it has a beautiful garden behind you.
That's a great idea, and it's something I have to work on, and I have to think about that. Thank you. That's really true. I just tend to wear the reds and the blues, and that background works. But yeah, you're right. It's true. That's a great idea. I do need to put that as a backdrop. So thank you, Kate.
All right. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you so much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. It was great to hear all the wonderful ideas that she has and how we could incorporate this theme of garden and greenness and nourishing and flourishing in her particular course. I'm so excited to see how it's going to develop. If you want to get in touch with Carmel, please check out the links below. And if you want to get a hold of me, be sure to click like and subscribe, and then look at my links as well. Have a beautiful day.